Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Trump summit causes division in Ukraine. Global crisis worsens with humanitarian and conflict issues. Air Canada strike resolved by government intervention. Human rights concerns rise in Sudan. Trump reports on Taiwan assuring Myanmar elections. Highlight military Junta strategy. Pakistan faces Monsoon casualties. Extreme water conditions cause displacement in Afghanistan. Certain experiences increased protests and political tension. Nigeria arrests terror leaders following 2013 incident. Newsom opposes from Redistricting. Pheu refutes conspiracy claims. Hurricane Erin threatens Caribbean and U.S. coastlines. Migrant crisis intensifies with UK-France agreement. Spirit Airlines faces uncertain future. Trump's Alaska summit sparks mixed reactions in Ukraine. Recent developments following U.S. President Donald Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska, have elicited a complex range of reactions within Ukraine. The summit itself concluded without an immediate ceasefire agreement, with Trump shifting his focus toward a full peace deal, a departure from the previously advocated ceasefire approach. This shift has fueled anxieties among Ukrainians, who feared a potential land for peace trade-off. The visual spectacle of Putin being welcomed with a red carpet arrival and a B-2 bomber flyover was met with dismay by many Ukrainians, who perceived it as a tacit endorsement of Putin's actions. Concerns centered on the possibility of Trump prioritizing a swift resolution over Ukrainian security and territorial integrity. Ukrainian residents expressed apprehension about a negotiated settlement that might involve ceding land to Russia. The sentiment was particularly strong among frontline soldiers, like those in the 72nd Brigade, who viewed the summit as a reinforcement of Putin's position and a disregard for the sacrifices made by Ukrainian forces. The shift in Trump's strategy has prompted a renewed emphasis on European support, with Ukrainian residents expressing gratitude for the continued solidarity of NATO members. However, a significant portion of the population remains skeptical, viewing Trump's approach as potentially detrimental to Ukraine's long-term security. Furthermore, there was widespread criticism of Trump's summit as a display of appeasement, with many Ukrainians feeling that Putin was being granted a platform to legitimize his aggression. The event has underscored the deep divisions within Ukraine regarding the best path forward in the conflict, with differing opinions on the priorities of diplomacy versus military resistance. Global crisis deepens. Humanitarian disaster and conflict intensify. A multifaceted crisis continues to escalate across the Middle East, marked by a severe humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza and escalating armed conflict. Widespread protests are erupting across Israel, fueled by growing concern over the ongoing war and the fate of approximately 50 hostages still held by Hamas. These demonstrations are disrupting daily life and challenging the government's strategy. The situation in Gaza remains dire, with warnings of imminent famine intensifying. International organizations and UN experts are documenting the devastating impact of Israel's military operations, highlighting the severe restrictions on humanitarian aid and the resulting suffering of the civilian population. Over 897 Palestinians have been confirmed killed, according to Hamas-run health ministry figures, which the UN considers reliable. Efforts to secure a ceasefire and facilitate the release of hostages are ongoing, mediated primarily by Egypt. However, negotiations have stalled, with Israel preparing to expand its military offensive into Gaza City and surrounding areas, a move that has triggered international condemnation. The Israeli government intends to evacuate residents from combat zones to the south of Gaza, a strategic maneuver aimed at containing the conflict. Meanwhile, protests in Israel are intensifying, with families of hostages demanding immediate action and questioning the government's handling of the crisis. Political divisions are deepening, with some factions calling for a complete shift in strategy. The demonstrations are highlighting the immense pressure on the Israeli government and the deep-seated anxieties within the nation. The conflict has resulted in a mounting death toll, widespread displacement, and a deepening humanitarian crisis. The situation underscores the urgent need for a sustainable resolution that addresses the underlying causes of the conflict and ensures the protection of civilians. International efforts to broker a ceasefire and deliver humanitarian assistance are facing significant obstacles, demanding intensified diplomatic engagement and a commitment to prioritizing human life. The future remains uncertain, with the potential for further escalation and continued suffering. Air Canada strike ends as government intervention forces resolution. A protracted strike by Air Canada's flight attendants concluded following a government intervention, halting hundreds of flights and significantly disrupting summer travel plans. The strike, initiated by over 10,000 employees seeking higher wages and compensation for work performed on the ground, was triggered by a stalemate in contract negotiations. The airline suspended all operations, including Air Canada Rouge, advising customers not to travel to airports unless flying with a different carrier. The core dispute centered on compensation, with the union arguing that Air Canada's initial offer, a 38% increase in total compensation over 4 years, was insufficient, particularly regarding unpaid time spent on boarding and waiting at airports. The union successfully leveraged public opinion to highlight this issue. Following mounting pressure and the potential for significant economic damage, Canada's Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu intervened, directing the Canadian Industrial Relations Board, CIRB, to order Air Canada to resume operations and engage in binding arbitration. This intervention, deemed necessary to mitigate the impact on the Canadian economy, effectively ended the strike. The CRB's directive stipulated that Air Canada must return its flight attendants to duty by 2 p.m. ET, say 1800 GMT. Despite this resolution, the airline anticipates a gradual return to normal services, estimating a 5-10-day period before full schedules are restored. Air Canada Express flights, operated by a third party, were unaffected. Key to the resolution was the union's persistent advocacy regarding ground work compensation, a common practice in the aviation industry that was not adequately addressed in the initial offers. The government's intervention prevented further escalation and minimized the disruption to Canada's economy, which was already facing challenges due to trade tensions. The union, while acknowledging the resolution, remained cautious, asserting its right to strike until a formal order for their return to work is issued. Air Canada's offer, while representing a substantial increase in compensation, was still viewed as falling short of union demands. The intervention underscored the importance of fair labor practices and the potential consequences of unresolved contract disputes. The situation highlighted the delicate balance between employer and employee interests and the role of government in mediating such conflicts. Human rights group Accuses Sudanese Army of Torture and Executions, a prominent human rights group, Emergency Lawyers, has issued a grave accusation, alleging that the Sudanese army is systematically torturing and executing individuals in the capital, Khartoum, following the army's recapture of the city in March. The group has documented hundreds of arrests, revealing that in the most severe cases, detainees have been discovered dead with clear evidence of torture. The allegations paint a disturbing picture of systematic abuse occurring amidst the ongoing bitter civil war between the Army and the Rapid Support Forces, (RSF). Throughout the conflict, Emergency Lawyers has consistently documented atrocities committed by both sides. Their recent statement highlights a dangerous escalation in violations, indicating a worsening situation. Detainees are reportedly being arrested arbitrarily and held in large detention centers, facing fates ranging from continued inhumane detention to trials conducted by security agencies lacking basic justice standards, or release in poor health. The most alarming claims involve the discovery of deceased detainees, suggesting the existence of execution chambers. This echoes historical patterns of abuse during the rule of Omar al-Bashir. The UN Independent International Fact-Finding Mission for the Sudan has previously confirmed a widespread pattern of arbitrary detention, torture, and ill treatment by both the Army and the RSF, including the use of rape and other sexual violence. The ongoing conflict has created one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with 12 million people displaced and famine declared in parts of the country. A recent cholera outbreak, fueled by the war, has caused nearly 100,000 cases and 470 deaths over the past year, as reported by Doctors Without Borders, (MSF). The situation underscores the urgent need for an end to the fighting and for accountability for the widespread human rights violations. The allegations against the Sudanese army represent a critical escalation in the already dire circumstances of the conflict. Trump claims Xi's assurance on Taiwan avoidance that former U.S. President Donald Trump announced that Chinese President Xi Jinping had assured him that China would not invade Taiwan as long as Trump remains in office. This revelation came during an interview with Fox News ahead of discussions with Russian President Vladimir Putin concerning the invasion of Ukraine. Trump stated that Xi had explicitly conveyed this commitment, saying, "I will never do it as long as you're president." He further noted Xi's characterization of himself as very patient. The exchange highlights a significant aspect of the complex relationship between the United States and China, particularly regarding Taiwan, which China views as its own territory and has repeatedly threatened to reclaim by force. Taiwan, conversely, vehemently opposes China's sovereignty claims and relies heavily on the United States for support. The Chinese embassy in Washington characterized the Taiwan issue as the most important and sensitive issue in China-U.S. relations. The embassy urged the U.S. government to adhere to the UN-China principle and the 3 U.S.-China joint communiques, emphasizing the need for prudent handling of Taiwan-related matters and safeguarding China-U.S. relations and peace across the Taiwan Strait. Despite the U.S.'s role as Taiwan's primary arms supplier and international backer, a formal diplomatic relationship remains absent, a standard position shared by most nations. Following Trump's comments, a senior lawmaker from Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party expressed gratitude for the support while simultaneously stressing the importance of bolstering Taiwan's own defense capabilities, recognizing that security cannot solely depend on promises or assistance from allies. The situation underscores the ongoing tensions and strategic considerations surrounding Taiwan's status in the Indo-Pacific region. Myanmar's upcoming elections, a strategic maneuver by the military junta. Myanmar's upcoming elections represent a calculated strategy by the military junta, led by General Min Aung Hlaing, to consolidate power and secure international recognition. Despite widespread condemnation, the junta is pushing ahead with a poll it claims will bring stability and development. The National Unity Government, an exiled administration, vehemently opposes the election, arguing it lacks legitimacy and will not reflect the will of the people. The junta aims to present a civilian Pheu aid to attract investment and normalize relations with key international actors, including Russia, China, Thailand, and India. Recent moves, such as a $300 million deal with the U.S. lobbying firm DCI Group, demonstrate this strategy. The military's attempts to portray a return to normalcy are viewed with skepticism, given its history of authoritarian rule and human rights abuses. The junta's actions are rooted in a long-standing pattern of military dominance. Following the 2020 election victory of Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy, the military staged a coup, arresting Suu Kyi and dissolving the democratically elected government. The junta has since imposed martial law in over 60 townships and criminalized criticism of the election, highlighting its determination to maintain control. The National Unity Government warns that the election will not address the deep-seated problems facing Myanmar, including economic collapse, a failing education system, and a breakdown of healthcare. The junta's actions are viewed as a tactic to distract from these issues and maintain its grip on power. The international community's response has been mixed, with some countries cautiously engaging with the junta, while others remain steadfast in their condemnation and support for the National Unity Government. The situation remains precarious, with the potential for increased violence and instability as the junta attempts to solidify its position before the election. Pakistan's monsoon disaster, rising casualties and widespread devastation. Pakistan is grappling with a catastrophic monsoon season, marked by extensive flooding, landslides, and a rapidly escalating death toll. Over 650 people have perished across the country since June, with the northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province bearing the brunt of the devastation. In the worst affected Buner district, at least 209 individuals remain missing, and rescue teams have recovered 8 unidentified bodies, due to the inability of families to identify them. The situation is compounded by severely damaged roads hindering the identification and recovery of remains. Across the country, flash floods and landslides have claimed hundreds of lives, including 60 in Indian-administered Kashmir and 9 in Pakistan-administered Kashmir, alongside 5 fatalities in Gilgit-Baltistan. The impact is particularly severe in mountainous regions, with entire villages partially buried by debris. Provincial authorities report that 10 to 12 entire villages have been affected. The ongoing monsoon rains, which account for approximately 3/4 of South Asia's annual rainfall between June and September, are exacerbating the crisis. Scientists attribute the increased intensity and frequency of these events to climate change, contributing to unstable mountain faces and accelerated glacial melt. This melt destabilizes rock and soil, triggering landslides that block rivers and further complicate rescue efforts. The province of Punjab has experienced record rainfall, with 73% more precipitation than the previous year, resulting in a higher number of deaths. Glaciologists point to the rapid retreat of glaciers, one of the most glaciated regions globally, as a significant contributing factor to the instability. Rescue operations are ongoing, but the sheer scale of the damage and the challenging terrain are presenting formidable obstacles. Heavy rainfall is predicted to continue until August 21st, prolonging the crisis and raising concerns about further displacement and loss of life. Water extremes drive displacement in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is experiencing a severe humanitarian crisis, primarily driven by escalating water extremes, both drought and devastating floods, significantly displacing its population. The situation is compounded by existing poverty, limited infrastructure, international isolation, and the Taliban's governance. Recent assessments reveal nearly 5 million people impacted and 400,000 displaced by early 2025, largely due to climate change-fueled environmental hazards. The country's predominantly rural population, reliant on agriculture and livestock, is exceptionally vulnerable to these shifts in the water cycle. Repeated droughts, now reaching a fourth in 5 years, have decimated crop yields, depleted pastures, and dried up vital water sources, pushing communities to the brink. Simultaneously, intensified rainfall events, exacerbated by a warmer atmosphere holding more moisture, are triggering destructive flash floods. The Taliban authorities have initiated infrastructure projects, including the construction of canals and dams, aimed at addressing the water crisis. However, these efforts are hampered by limited resources and the government's isolation. Despite prayers for rain, the fundamental challenges remain, with the water scarcity impacting livelihoods and the environment. Many Afghans are forced to migrate to neighboring countries like Pakistan and Iran, often seeking temporary work rather than returning to their farms. Abdul Jalil Razuli's village, for example, experienced a decade-long exodus to Pakistan and Iran, returning only to work odd jobs. Similarly, Hamayan Amiri's family has faced declining well water and repeated displacements. The Harud River, nearing the Iranian border, is frequently dry, and communities are increasingly vulnerable to flash floods. Wahidullah's family lost their home and livestock to a recent flood, leaving them displaced and without resources. The situation is further complicated by the Taliban's reliance on religious explanations for the challenges, while acknowledging the severity of the crisis. The UN and various organizations are struggling to provide adequate aid, highlighting the immense scale of the humanitarian need and the complex obstacles to effective assistance. Serbia faces escalating protests amidst violence and political tension for the fifth consecutive night. Serbia has been gripped by widespread unrest, marked by the arson of ruling party offices and escalating clashes between protesters and police. The epicenter of the violence occurred in Valjevo, where a small group of masked individuals targeted the empty headquarters of the Serbian Progressive Party, ESNS, with fire. Police responded with the use of stun grenades and tear gas following these attacks. These events coincide with broader allegations of police brutality and violence across Belgrade and Novi Sad, claims vehemently denied by the Serbian Interior Ministry. The protests were initially ignited by the November collapse of a railway station in Novi Sad, resulting in the tragic deaths of 16 people. Public anger stems from accusations of corruption and negligence within the government of President Aleksandar Vučić, the leader of the SNS, prompting a significant outpouring of dissent. While previous anti-corruption demonstrations had remained largely peaceful, Wednesday's events witnessed a dramatic shift with the emergence of pro-government counter-demonstrators, significantly intensifying the conflict. Furthermore, demonstrations demanding early elections have been taking place across several cities, with SNS offices and flags becoming primary targets for protesters. The Serbian Radical Party headquarters also faced attacks, demonstrating the breadth of opposition. Numerous injuries have been reported at protests throughout the country, and unverified social media footage depicting police violence has fueled further outrage. International concern is mounting, with Michael O'Flaherty, the Council of Europe's Commissioner for Human Rights, expressing serious concerns about the disproportionate use of force by the police and calling for an end to arbitrary arrests. The situation remains highly volatile, with no immediate resolution in sight and continued demands for governmental change. The involvement of Russia, which has pledged support to President Vučić, adds another layer of complexity to the already tense political landscape. Nigeria arrests key terror group leaders following 2022 jailbreak. Nigerian security forces have announced the arrest of Mahmoud Mohammed Usman and Mahmoud al-Nigeri, identified as the leaders of Jama'atu Ansarul Muslimina fi Biladis Sudan, commonly known as Ansaru, following the group's involvement in the 2022 jailbreak at the Kuji medium security prison in Abuja. National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu revealed the targeted operation occurred between May and July, detailing the men's long-standing presence on Nigeria's most wanted list and international wanted lists. Ansaru, a jihadist group that claimed responsibility for the July 2022 attack, facilitated the release of hundreds of inmates from the prison, located approximately 40 kilometers from the capital and the presidential villa. The group's brazen assault utilized guns and explosives. Usman and al-Nigeri were implicated in multiple attacks on civilians, security forces, and critical infrastructure, alongside involvement in high-profile kidnappings and armed robberies, allegedly financing terrorism through these illicit activities. The group emerged in 2012, initially breaking away from Boko Haram due to disagreements with Abubakar Shekau's extremist ideology. Initially rejecting Boko Haram, Ansaru subsequently adopted similar violent tactics, The United States designated Ansaaru and Boko Haram as foreign terrorist organizations in 2013, following incidents such as the 2013 kidnapping and execution of 7 international construction workers. Prior to the 2022 jailbreak, Ansaaru had previously raided a police station in Abuja in 2012, further demonstrating its disruptive capabilities. The arrests represent a significant achievement in Nigeria's ongoing fight against terrorism, particularly given the group's complex history and association with al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. Security forces successfully recaptured many of the released inmates, highlighting the effectiveness of their response to the initial attack. The ongoing efforts reflect a broader strategy to dismantle terrorist networks and mitigate the threat of violence across the nation. Newsom mobilizes to combat Trump's redistricting push. California Governor Gavin Newsom is spearheading a multifaceted effort to challenge President Donald Trump's mid-decade redistricting strategy, framing the battle as a defense of democratic principles and fair representation. The core of Newsom's approach centers on securing a victory in the upcoming November ballot initiative, aiming to establish an independent redistricting commission to oversee future congressional mapmaking. This initiative directly confronts Trump's attempt to manipulate district lines for partisan advantage. Key to Newsom's strategy is leveraging his considerable political influence and fundraising capabilities. He's actively cultivating support among Democratic constituencies and utilizing his expansive email list, a significant asset in mobilizing voters. The governor's rhetoric emphasizes the importance of citizen input and safeguards against political manipulation. The situation is further complicated by Newsom's own recent actions, including his controversial podcast appearances featuring figures like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk. While critics have questioned his motives, Newsom defends these engagements as a necessary step to understand and counter Trump's messaging. He asserts that these actions are part of a broader effort to expose and challenge the president's tactics. Furthermore, Newsom is aggressively confronting Trump on other fronts, including potential legal challenges and resistance to settlements involving the University of California, Los Angeles. He's adopted a confrontational tone, frequently criticizing Trump's behavior and framing the redistricting battle as a pivotal moment for American democracy. The initiative's success hinges on Democratic voter turnout and the establishment of a permanent independent commission. Newsom's strategy is a direct response to Trump's attempt to reshape the political landscape and maintain a significant advantage. The battle represents a key moment in the ongoing struggle between the two political figures and their respective visions for the nation's future. Thai public disillusioned, Pheu Thai Denny's conspiracy claims. Recent polling data reveals widespread disillusionment among Thai citizens regarding both political parties and the judicial system. A significant 41.91% of respondents expressed complete hopelessness in political parties' ability to address national issues, while another 34.99% felt somewhat hopeless. This sentiment extends to constituency MPs, with 32.29% expressing dissatisfaction and 28.24% stating outright dissatisfaction. Remarkably, 50.69% would not re-elect their current MP, reflecting a deep lack of confidence in elected officials. Amidst this public sentiment, the Pheu Thai party vehemently denies allegations of a secret deal between former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra and Constitutional Court judges. Prampong Naparit, a former party spokesman, dismissed the claims as a groundless fabrication, intended to discredit Thaksin and Paetongtarn Shinawatra. The court is scheduled to deliver verdicts in 2 politically sensitive cases, one against Thaksin and another concerning Paetongtarn's alleged breach of ethical standards related to a leaked audio recording. The audio recording, featuring a conversation between Paetongtarn and Cambodian Senate President Hun Sen, has fueled the controversy. Paetongtarn's remarks, including an offer to take care of it if Hun Sen desired something, have been interpreted as improper attempts to appease a personal friend of her father. She defends these comments as part of her negotiation technique. To counter the accusations, the court's judges recently concluded a study trip to India, which has been presented as a legitimate executive-level training program. Former Senator Somchai Swankar has provided evidence of this trip on the court's official website, further discrediting the conspiracy theories. Paetongtarn intends to appear in court on her birthday, August 21st, to address the allegations. Pheu Thai has expressed full confidence in Paetongtarn's integrity and stated that they have no contingency plans beyond awaiting the court's decision. Veteran nominee Chaikasam Nidasiri is prepared to step in if necessary, demonstrating a commitment to ensuring a stable leadership position. The controversy highlights a significant level of distrust within the Thai political landscape and the ongoing efforts to address it. Hurricane Erin, a rapidly intensifying threat to the Caribbean and U.S. coastlines. Hurricane Erin has emerged as the first hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, rapidly intensifying into a Category 5 storm with sustained winds reaching 160 mph. The storm's dramatic intensification, described as explosive, occurred overnight, transforming it from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane within a 24-hour period. Current projections indicate that Erin will initially pass north of the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico over the weekend, bringing with it the potential for up to 6 inches, 15 cm of rainfall, posing significant risks of flash flooding and mudslides. Moving northward, Erin is forecast to track past the east of the Bahamas and towards the outer banks of North Carolina next week. This movement will generate life-threatening surf and rip currents along almost the entire eastern coast of the United States, with Florida and the mid-Atlantic states expected to experience the most dangerous conditions. Bermuda is also anticipated to face life-threatening surf conditions and heavy rainfall. Due to the severe gale force winds, the U.S. Coast Guard has implemented restrictions for vessels at ports in St. Thomas and St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as 6 municipalities in Puerto Rico, including San Juan. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, has predicted an above-normal Atlantic hurricane season for 2025, with a projected increase in the number of tropical storms reaching Category 4 and 5 intensity, largely attributed to the effects of global warming. The immediate focus remains on monitoring Erin's trajectory and providing warnings to coastal communities to mitigate the potential for devastating impacts from the storm's powerful winds, heavy rainfall, and dangerous surf conditions. Authorities are urging residents in affected areas to heed evacuation orders and follow safety guidelines. Channel migrant crisis escalates amidst new UK-France agreement. A surge in small boat crossings across the English Channel has been observed since the implementation of a new on-in, one-out agreement between the UK and France. Within 11 days following the agreement's activation, over 500 migrants successfully reached the UK via these vessels, adding to the already substantial total of 28,000 arrivals this year and exceeding 50,000 since Labour's ascent to power in July 2024. A notable incident involved a boat carrying more than 100 individuals being sighted in the channel, highlighting the ongoing challenge. The on-in, one-out scheme, established as part of a collaborative effort between Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron, operates on the principle of returning one migrant to France for each successful asylum seeker admitted to the UK. Initial detentions occurred in Dover earlier this month, though removals to France are projected to take up to 3 months. Labour's commitment to dismantling people smuggling operations remains, acknowledging the complexity and protracted nature of the task. Smugglers estimate the capacity of their vessels, potentially accommodating up to 150 individuals, leading to concerns about overcrowding and potential dangers. Reports indicate instances of children being crushed within the boats, raising serious humanitarian concerns. Crossings are predominantly higher during summer months when channel weather conditions are favorable. Last August witnessed over 4,000 arrivals, demonstrating the fluctuating nature of the crisis. The National Crime Agency has reported some success in disrupting the smugglers' business model, exemplified by the seizure of 20 inflatable boats, destined for the channel from a Bulgarian lorry. This represents the second such discovery in less than 3 weeks, underlining the need for international cooperation. The government intends to utilize this strategy to combat illegal immigration. Sir Keir Starmer has emphasized a zero-tolerance approach to illegal border crossings, asserting a commitment to secure borders. The 11-month pilot project accepts an equal number of asylum seekers who haven't attempted to cross and pass security and eligibility checks. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Pheu criticized the government's New Deal as having no deterrent effect whatsoever. Spirit Airlines' uncertain future and potential impact on airfares. The future of Spirit Airlines is increasingly uncertain, with the airline facing substantial financial difficulties and a potential shutdown, prompting concerns about rising airfares across the industry. Spirit's recent filing indicated a possible operational lifespan of only a year due to persistent losses and declining revenue. This situation poses a significant risk to consumers, as Spirit's disruptive influence, often referred to as his Spirit effect, has historically driven down prices, forcing major airlines to offer competitive basic economy fares. A proposed merger between Spirit and JetBlue was blocked by federal regulators due to antitrust concerns, with the judge citing the potential for increased fares. Spirit's aggressive undercutting of competitor prices, averaging between 7% and 11% in impacted markets, has been a key factor in this dynamic. The airline's scaling back of its flight schedule to mitigate losses has further exacerbated this trend, leading to an average 5.7% fare increase on discontinued routes, as analyzed by TD Cowen. Even if Spirit avoids closure, a potential acquisition by another carrier including United, Delta, American, or Frontier remains a possibility. Spirit's valuable aircraft and airport slots, particularly in congested locations like LaGuardia and Newark, make it an attractive target. However, any merger would face regulatory scrutiny, though a Trump administration might be less inclined to block it compared to the current Biden administration. Financial challenges plague the entire low-cost carrier sector, with Frontier and Spirit themselves engaging in discussions regarding a merger that ultimately failed to reach an agreement. Opponents of airline consolidation argue that further mergers would only exacerbate the problem, citing a historical trend where new entities fail to maintain pre-merger route networks and flight frequencies. Industry experts warn that Spirit's absence would likely trigger a response from other airlines through reduced seat availability in basic economy classes, potentially leading to higher fares even on routes not directly served by Spirit. The airline's CEO emphasized Spirit's contribution to consumer savings, but acknowledged ongoing efforts to safeguard its unique position within the U.S. aviation industry. The situation underscores the delicate balance between low-cost fares and industry consolidation, with significant implications for travelers and the broader air travel market.